Yes, it is true. They tell us that we did evolve from little tiny snails and that we lost our tails and that somehow we morphed into this kind of weird genetic defective hairless monkey called Homo sapiens. And there was one group who delivered the warning. Whether or not anybody listened way back when or is listening now, I don't know. But that group, you can see up close on my world famous cheap, cheesy camera, is the De-Evolution Band, or if you prefer the contraction, DEVO from OHIO. And that, my friends, is what we're going to talk about today on this, the latest Malcolm Tent Shoot interview. Woo! Excitement abounds, kids, because we have here today, for the fourth installment, for the fourth grilling in the hot seat, Devo founding member, Devo conceptualist, Devo constructivist, Bob Lewis. What's up, Bob?
Howdy, guys. It's always nice to be here with you, Malcolm, however remotely it may be.
Well, you know, Bob, you'll never be remote to me as far as I'm concerned.
So tonight, I understand we're going to talk about the second Creative Arts Festival, 1974.
Yes, a mere lifetime or two ago.
Well, just to contrast it a little bit with the first one was kind of thrown together. The second one, we had a little more time, and the kind of the extraneous parts like Rod Reisman on drums and Fred Weber singing had been outsourced. And so it was a kind of closer knit group. The second was Bob Casale on rhythm guitar, me on lead, Jerry on bass, Mark on keyboards, and Jungle Jim Mothersbaugh on drums, although he had not yet prepared his electronic drum, so it was just a standard drum kit.
Right on.
And instead of being in the shishi and refined recital hall, the show was in the governance chambers in the student union that later became famous for being the site of the movie The Truth About De-Evolution, where Mark performs Jocko Homo.
Right on. And so this is all, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Give a little bit of background. This is all taking place at Kent State University.
Correct.
And the first ever performance by Devo was in 1973. And the second ever was a year later in 1974. Now, why, Bob Lewis, would we be talking about this performance in particular all of a sudden out of nowhere?
Well, an incomplete recording of the performance surfaced within the past few weeks, and we posted it up on YouTube, and it got some pretty nice response. So the entire performance, with the exception of the last two songs, which were "Oh No" and "All of Us," and if anybody wants to listen to the recording, then you can also Google "All of Us." It's on one of the Devo hardcores, and it's virtually identical to the version that was performed in 1974. "Oh No" has regrettably been, for the most part, lost to time. I don't know if there's any recorded versions of that.
Oh,
I don't
there is. There is.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, on hardcore. I think Volume 1 has
okay.
"Oh No" on it, spelled O-N-O.
Yes, with like rough like a match pack, rough like a
Dry
dump
as a
truck.
cactus. They actually, and they performed it on the Hardcore Devo tour in 2014, which was
well. And I think one of the keys in that song was the "Oh No, You Go Home," which was kind of like, you know, something a child would say to another child. And I was thinking about that today because it also reminded me of how Can You Take It came to exist in the form that it does. And Jerry already had the lyrics to the verses, but he didn't know what to do with it yet. And so into my mind came the thing that always like ticked me off when I was a kid, when somebody would go nee 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 to you, And that was the basis for the nah, 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 which is kind of the repeating link between the verses.
Right. Ah, very interesting. I never would have thought of that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
But let's talk about the songs that night. And I know you've kind of listened to it, and you have some thoughts and some questions. So why don't you kind of take the lead, walk us through it, and then we can comment on them.
All right. Yeah. Happy to do that because I am not just a media star and a purveyor of video logs. I'm a fan. I'm a fanboy geek when it comes to Devo and things Devo. So when you posted that thing, I just about popped my cork. I actually stopped doing everything that I was doing at the moment, went onto the dreaded YouTube and looked it up and started listening immediately. And I'm one of those dudes who's collected every single Devo recording I could ever get my hands on. I love pretty much the entire catalog, but there's something about the early Devo and proto Devo when the sound was coming together, and it really honestly sounded like no other music being made on the planet. Just something about it that really gets my goat. Get it? So yeah, when you put that thing up, I just started in on it. And I've been playing it a lot. And so using my famous dollar store readers, we're going to dig into my notes right now. But with just a little bit of background before, the first performance of Devo in 1973, as you mentioned earlier, you had the lead singer and drummer position outsourced.
Right.
Maybe just give us one little bit of insight as to why that was.
Well, Fred Weber was a really good singer. He fronted a couple of bands, one including the Measles, and sometimes he would do songs with Joe Walsh. When Walsh would be playing out, he would have Fred come up and sing with him. And, I just thought it couldn't hurt to have, a more polished vocalist, perhaps. Because like Mark had not indicated yet that he could sing, really, at that time. And Jerry wasn't the greatest singer at the time then. I think he grew into that. He became better at singing. And Rod Reisman was a friend of Jerry's, and he had played in a bunch of bands in Kent. He was a really good drummer, and he was really the only drummer we could talk into it. So
right on. And neither of those guys were like actually part of the Devo inner circle.
No.
They didn't really know what they were stepping into, I'm going to guess.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So you fast forward a year, and now you've got this kind of prototype lineup of what we know as Devo. You've got two Mothersbaugh, you got two Casalis, and you got the man in the middle.
Right.
In this case is you, Bob Lewis. So that's where we're at. An entire year has elapsed between 1973 and 1974. The first performance and now the second performance. I might as well ask this question: why such a long gap in between performances?
I think because we hadn't really spent enough time trying to develop an actual band. Jerry was working in Akron. I was driving a meat truck. Mark was managing an apartment building for his dad. And so we hadn't really, and I think he was still doing some Flossie Bobbitt stuff, which we may talk about, if not this, then in a later one. And so we just hadn't seen the possibility of this actually making this a commercial success. It was still kind of an academic art exercise, I think you could safely say, although it was coming together. And especially trying to get Jim Mothersbaugh involved and his electronic drums. As I said, he didn't have them quite ready for this, so it was regular drums. But that's where we were headed.
Right, and it should be mentioned as well that being a band Devo was just one of many facets of Devo, whether it was the written arts, the visual arts, performance arts. So really, Devo could have gone any number of ways, and this second performance was just one way that the band or the collective, as it were, could have gone.
Right. And it was uh, um, the first year, Ed Dorn had been a visiting professor in the 72-73 school year, and he was very supportive. And he and Berthoff, apparently, who was a English professor, they were the ones who got us the space in the Creative Arts Festival the first time. The second time, Dorn and his wife were invited to be in the Creative Arts Festival. And once again, they said, well, are the Devo guys going to be there? And so they said, yeah. So once again, we kind of got grandfathered in because we knew the people that were putting the show on.
Whatever it takes.
That's right.
Cool. So we've got the background now for the second ever Devo performance. And the first thing that, a few things sort of hit me all at once when I heard this for the first time. The first, of course, being a bit of an audio snob, was that the mix of the recording it's pretty uneven. It's a soundboard recording, but instruments are constantly coming in and coming out, and levels are fluctuating wildly. So it's kind of hard to get an overall picture of what the sound is, but you can certainly figure it out. There are a few moments where everything really coalesces very nicely. You can hear guitar, bass, drums, everything's there. The keyboards, both guitars, and it kind of hits you like that. And it's a darn sight better than what little bit we've heard from the first Performing Arts Devo performance, which was recorded off of a single video camera located in a position where you couldn't hear the drums or the vocals. So right off the bat, this is a huge improvement and a really, really unique insight into the formative.
It was a little keyboard heavy because I think Mark was going directly into the board where we were playing through, amps. So, but yeah, you can most of the time you can hear the levels aren't exactly what you would want, but everything is there.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to it any number of times and I've enjoyed it immensely. So very cool. Thank you for posting it, doing a public service for us spuds out here. Now, the first thing I noticed, song 1, Private Secretary. That to me is a song that doesn't make any sense really in terms of Devo, unless you put it in the context of what you talked about once about this Devo concept of a wacky, nutty ad campaign for a product such as cheek-to-cheek anal deodorant. Seems to me that Private Secretary is looking at contemporary pop music from that angle.
Yeah,
am I right?
That's fair. Yeah, and then Jerry had a fascination with businessmen in general, and so it's an attack on the whole concept of having a secretary, in a sense too. I think Clock Out would be a later return to the same subject matter.
Right. And that's really interesting because other songs in the Devo canon fit into that kind of worldview of like these really early compositions that are like satirical takes on pop culture, more so than a bunch of devolved, genetically modified organisms making music. If
right.
You catch my drift.
It's a little observational rather than, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like from an anthropologist viewpoint.
Yeah.
Rather than being someone who's in the muck.
Right. And actually, the first thing I thought of, this might be kind of an obscure reference, but when I was a kid, one of the biggest things that we collected in school and which got me in trouble a number of times was not football cards or baseball cards, but wacky packages. And the first thing I thought of when I heard Private Secretary and in thinking of something like cheek-to-cheek anal deodorant, it's kind of like a wacky package. It's a satire on a type of music and a worldview.
Right. And then Private Secretary had been recorded before on that. I think it's one of the 3 songs that are on the acetate that Jerry has that Peter Gregg and he and I did. And I very much, when I hadn't heard this tape ever. So when I finally heard it, what I really liked was how Mark did this kind of like poignant intro into Private Secretary, which really really made it much better.
Yeah, it's a total sucker punch, because that was the first thing I thought when I heard it. I was like, oh, this is very nice and very normal. I don't know how this is going to go. And then the song begins, and it's a little more kind of rock and roll or whatever. And then the lyrics come in, and they're very reassuring because there's nothing normal about them. And then there's that first bit of synthesizer noise that Mark conjures up, when normally you'd hear like a nice solo of some sort. It's not a nice solo at all. It sounds like somebody having horrible gastric pains or something. And that's Devo.
Yes.
There are other, let's see, what did I make notes of about the sucker intro? Interesting that on Private Secretary and a few other songs, Mark and Jerry sing a duet.
Yeah.
And that
in fact,
really...
somebody even commented that it was Beatlesque.
Oh, I don't know if I go that far.
Yeah,
but...
no, it's not exactly John and Paul.
No. And they didn't do anything like that until the New Traditionalists album in 1981.
Right.
With Jerkin' Back and Forth, which is another reference that we'll get to in a minute. And it's also Mark singing in a Mark Mothersbaugh voice for the first show ever that we can see through the very brief video snippet that's out there. He was wearing the monkey mask.
Right.
And for other performances from that era, he was singing as Boogie Boy.
Right.
So I'm going to guess that Boogie Boy hadn't made the scene yet.
I don't think Boogie Boy had really made the scene yet.
All right.
I'm not sure he had been found yet at the novelty store in Canton.
Right. So, and this is another question. Are there any photos from this gig anywhere?
Well, there's the black and white photo from the after gig. There's a photo I've got of Dorn and Berthoff laughing during the performance, but those are the only. That's all I know.
Oh man!
If there are any out there, we'd like to see them. That's for sure.
All right, all you people out there who might be watching, and if you were in Kent in 1974, we want those photos. We want to see what Jerry's coat of many colors actually looked like. We want to know what Mark Mothersbaugh looked like. We want to see Jungle Jim behind a set of acoustic drums, the Bobs with slides on their fingers. These are very interesting things that we need to see. So get with it, all you people out there.
Somebody's got to have something.
Well, it was a creative arts festival. There had to be a camera somewhere.
Yeah, in fact, I'm surprised they didn't have like a photographer there to photograph it. They should have.
Somebody was slacking. I'm going to avoid frustration here at the thought of lost history. And we're going to get on to the history that has been found and that we can enjoy right here, right now. Let's see. The Meat Man. The Meat Man got name checked. Who's the Meat Man, Bob?
Well, that's me, because I was driving the meat truck at the time.
So that wasn't just a Devo myth. There actually was a meat truck.
Yes. Yes, I worked for Akron Provision Company. And I used to, I would deliver steaks to like the high society folk in Akron. So like I would literally go to the Firestone Mansion on occasion to drop off steaks. And then Lyle Buckingham, who was the head partner at Buckingham Doolittle, like the most prestigious law firm in time, his wife every morning would call and order either a small fillet or a chicken breast, and I would run that out to her so the cook could cook it for her lunch.
Oh, that must be really nice. I need one fillet, please. Bring it over now.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, hobnob with the snobs. There you go. All right, so we've made it one song in here, and we've already unearthed a lot of interesting information. So you guys kind of suckered him in with Private Secretary and hit him with a 1-2 socceroonie of Devo lyricism and some very bizarre musical hits. Next up, I've Been Refused.
And once again, that was one of the ones from the first acetate that we recorded.
Right. And this one, like a few other songs in these early Devo sets, kind of belie a really strong rhythm and blues influence, whether anybody would want to admit it or not. What do you think?
Oh, no. Yeah, Jerry would readily admit it. It was a blues song. And the lyrics were autobiographical.
Right.
This is after the period where Jerry had the job managing the porno shop in Akron, assistant manager actually. And so the one verse, last Monday morning, minus 20 degrees, walked to unemployment on my knees. Judge says something about bail. You go to jail for a while.
Yeah, Judge said you're the porno king. Go to jail for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly enough, I found out later the guy that owned the porno shop was a guy named Winston Willis from Cleveland, a Black entrepreneur. And when he was 19, he opened a place on University Circle in Cleveland called the Jazz Temple. And he was talking to Miles Davis about the fact that he's 19 years old. He meets Miles Davis and he says, I'm going to open this jazz club in Cleveland. He's all excited about it. And Miles says, if you ever open it, call me and I'll come play. And when he got it open, Miles Davis came and played. I saw John Coltrane there and Cannonball Adderley. It was open in 1962 and 1963. And then the local authorities shut it down for whatever reason, because they didn't, I think they thought that Winston Willis was an uppity guy.
Yeah, well, there always was that Negro problem, and
right.
Well, I'm glad that the authorities dealt with it in the proper fashion. You'll have no jazz in Cleveland.
Well, see, there were white people and black people going to the same club.
There you go.
So
verboten. Verboten. Well, I'm glad if nothing else you got to see Coltrane and Cannonball and Miles. I mean, that's pretty good, man. That's bragging rights right there.
I got to go. My brother was older than I was, and he had these beatnik friends, and they would let me tag along on those.
That's great. So there you go, deeper and deeper roots and strange interconnections in the world of Devo and the scene from whence they came. And this also follows right in with the same kind of aesthetic where you guys are doing this tongue-in-cheek satirical commentary on contemporary culture. It's not so much these creatures who are the de-evolution band, the devolved entities making music that's devolved. You're just kind of looking at things with a jaundiced eye and putting some borderline silly lyrics, but it's deeper and more cutting than that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that continues into Subhuman Woman and the Rope Song, both are which are like they're discussions about the whole male-female relationship.
Yeah, but they're not stupid love songs. They're very intelligent, kind of, well, I don't know about this love thing, or maybe more from the biological standpoint.
And then, of course, in Subhuman Woman, Mark and Jerry do like the call and response,
right,
on that.
And there's another very interesting moment in Subhuman Woman where it's toward the beginning of the song, and you can see one entire what I don't know what to call it, one entire dynamic being played out.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Go ahead, tell the story.
I'll tell the story, but first I have to get the infamous Harry the Cat, who is trying to bogart the camera action here. Harry, I love you, but I gotta lose you. So the song begins. They're trundling right along. Mark comes in a little bit late on a vocal cue, and Jerry says, "Hey, dummy." thus setting up 50 years
That's right. That's right.
of a particular relationship dynamic within Devo.
And if you go back to the video, the little remaining video of the first performance, at one point Jerry goes over to talk to Mark on the keyboard, and then as Jerry walks back and his back is turned, Mark flips him the bird. So it's an ongoing tension, I think we could say.
Should we say that in the beginning was the end, perhaps?
We could say that.
We could. A couple other interesting observations about I've Been Refused, and I gotta warn you, I'm just telling it like it is as an impartial observer and a fanboy dissector of these things. Bob Lewis, you're playing a lot of riffs that got later used by Bob Mothersbaugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob was very good about like preserving existing licks for songs. He did, you know, he was not ego threatened by it. He figured that fit, and he understood it was kind of a new way to approach. You know, he was doing more Rolling Stones kind of stuff. So it was a change for him, but I think he got it.
I would say so. I mean, and that's a real, I think, example of concept, because to my ear, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like what you were doing was taking standard rock licks and standard rock riffs and sort of doing a Picasso on them, like deconstructing them and taking one part of a riff or a lick and making that the entire riff and or lick. So instead of doing like a hot blues run with a bent note, you would just take the bent note and.
Well, I wouldn't mind having that on my epitaph of the Picasso-esque usage there. So I'm not going to argue with that. That's and I think there's two factors involved there. Yes, somewhat that's what I was trying to do, and perhaps that was what was in the sphere of talent available to me. So yeah.
Right. Whereas I don't think anybody would argue that Bob Mothersbaugh could do all of that and more.
Yes.
He was I think you described it once as being a very, you're talking about Mark, but you could say with Bob too, a very facile guitar player. He could pretty much do anything.
Yeah.
And if anybody's ever heard the early demos that his other band, the Jitters, recorded, you could see that he was very capable of playing regular type rock and roll.
Absolutely.
And then to make that the step from that to Devo music, to me, it never made a whole lot of sense. But now listening to the guitar licks and the riffs that you were playing at this time, that's kind of the glue that holds it all together.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Bob was pretty good. Now, we were a little spoiled having grown up with Joe Walsh and Glenn Schwartz and some people like that are like A+ level players. I don't know that Bob is an A+ level, but I think he's an A level player.
Yeah, definitely. Let's not forget the Numbers Band, guys like Bob Kidney.
Right.
And other people like Terry Hind who were around, who were, like you said, top shelf. So right off the bat, you kind of had to be on top of your game a little bit.
Right.
Let's see, more observations about I've Been Refused. Now, this really fascinated me too. That song got reused by Jihad Jerry in the Evildoers, and it was also played on the 2014 Hardcore Devo tour. And it had been recorded by Devo in the studio back in the early 70s, but the versions that they played in 2014 leaned a lot more on this particular arrangement. Like the way the song was played at the second ever Devo performance was kind of forgotten about until 2014. And they're very subtle, but it's very definite. What do you think how do you think they resurrected that arrangement? Do you have any idea?
Well, maybe it was just like conscious going retro, maybe. I'm thinking.
I wonder. And that's also the other question. Where did this tape come from after all these years of having been lost somewhere? Where was it?
It just showed up. Somebody sent me a thumb drive.
Wow. I love it. There's another element in play here, and that's the repetition. And you see that a lot in the very early Devo stuff. And Jerry has talked about repetition a lot. And in I've Been Refused, you have instrumental parts, bridges, pre-choruses, whatever, where they just go on far longer than you would expect, almost to kind of like a hypnotic effect.
You're right.
How did audiences react to something like that?
Well, I would say the second year audience was more enthusiastic than the first year audience, and actually the subsequent after response afterwards was, and I would say surprisingly positive.
Hmm. Right on.
People got it. Of course, I mean, you got it was kind of an academic, smart people group.
Yeah, it wasn't
So,
it wasn't like you showed up at JB's in Kent on a Wednesday night and tried to do
they
this.
would want, play Leonard Skinner might have been the thing. So I think these people were more apt to accept experimental avant-garde weirdness.
Right on. Right on.
If you can listen to John Cage, this was easy to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. It's conceptual, but a little more user friendly.
Right.
So that's the second song of the set. Let me go into Subhuman Woman. We talked about it a little bit before. There's one thing that kind of struck my ear. It's almost like a prototype version of Uncontrollable Urge. Because of that long bit of repetition where they go da 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 for what seems like minutes and minutes and minutes. That's
Right.
kind of sort of a foreshadowing of the Uncontrollable Urge machine repetition.
That's an interesting link. I hadn't thought about that, but I can see it.
Yeah, and another great tune. It's clearly based in rhythm and blues. It's utterly twisted and mutated. It's got more of those riffs, those guitar riffs and licks. Baby Talking Bitches, I think, was pretty much pilfered from this song in terms of guitar licks.
You're right. I think that's fair also.
Yeah, god dang, so much stuff going on here. After that, the rope song.
But dangling.
Yeah. Oh man, more repetition, more guitar riffing that got used later.
Extremely painful on the fingers to play that. Oh,
I can imagine.
A lot of bending.
Yeah, yeah. And your tone also is very similar to what Bob ended up doing on his own with Devo. Did you instruct him in stuff like that, like guitar tone?
No, I didn't. I didn't really have to instruct him about anything. He just, he would pick it up. He'd get that you want kind of a thin, incisive note there because you want it to cut through the other stuff.
Right. And that leads us to the next song, and this is where things take a bit of a deviation from the way the set has been up to this moment. Prior to this, we've got the sort of wacky package take on R&B and contemporary music, and then all of a sudden we get to Pig's Waddle.
Yeah.
Pig's Waddle's a song that's got a little bit of emotional heft to it.
Right, and it sounded so good. Bob Casale got such a good sound on his Hagstrom for that. It really sets the song up, I think.
No, definitely. And lyrically, I don't know, it's obviously a little bit more obtuse than your average song, but I would love to know what some of the background is, because there's something that kind of strikes close to the bone personally about these lyrics. I just want to sleep. That's a motif that occurred later in some of Jerry's lyrics on the Something for Everybody album.
Well, I think that was in the aftermath, the aftermath of a romance gone wrong, and when Jerry was actually kind of depressed for a while and was sleeping a lot. And so I think he was actually working through it. So it was real.
Interesting.
Humans love, why can't I?
Yes, but then it sets up to the next line. Why can't I eat the bird, eat the pig? There's nothing obvious about it at all.
Right.
That's a great
Funny when they
transition.
won't let you do natural.
What's that?
It's not funny when they won't let you do natural.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably my single favorite song in this set.
Yeah, yeah, I thought so too. I had kind of forgotten about it, and I just thought it sounded so perfect the way it was. There's nothing wrong with that song. It was right for the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, there's the lyrical reference to jerking back and forth.
Right.
Yet another instance, and this is why being a fan of Devo is so much fun, because the more you get into the imagery and the lyricism and the old written works, especially the old written works, you see just one example after another of an idea that was later purposed.
Right.
Like, I mean, like in My Struggle, Chinaman's introductory screed basically describes the New Traditionalists stage set. It's just amazing how many of these ideas were already in place.
Right.
Love it, love it. So yeah, Pig's Waddle, love it. And then we go back to more of the extremely cynical view of pop music, specifically funk and soul, and that would be stiff.
And I was thinking about that too because Jerry, I had the lick down, and Jerry had lyrics of the Fruit Oozes, Wetly, Stay Dry, and Rubber Boots, and he was trying to figure out how to put it together and what we should call the song, and he talked about he wanted it to be like rigid and inflexible, and I said, well, why don't we just be straightforward and make it a command, be stiff. And once we had that, then the song came together pretty quickly.
Right on. And it took me a long time to kind of twig to the fact that what you're really saying is the opposite of, hang loose, man, be mellow.
Yes, right. They said, no, we don't want to hang loose. We want to be stiff.
Yes. And that song totally makes it. And it's another bit of the arrangement in this particular version that they never did until the 2014 hardcore tour was the down tuning.
Right.
Because you tune down to what sounds to me like maybe a low C on that one.
That would have been Bob, because Bob Casale is playing the rhythm on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I'm not sure what he was doing because I was just playing the lead part.
Interesting. Because it's just one of those things from the 2014 hardcore tour. They actually stopped during the set so that Bob Mothersbaugh could do the down tuning and then play it with that wicked drop note. And they had never done that before. And I was wondering, where did that come from? Well, it came from the second ever Devo performance in 1974.
And I do find it interesting that over the years that it remained true to its form. No matter how they did it, the song pretty much remained true to its form.
Yeah, definitely fully formed. And that's something else that really impressed me, is that everything in this set, every song is fully formed. There's no scratching around trying to figure out, well, what part is next, what are we doing next. I mean, you guys had it. It was tight. Obviously there's the transitions from one song to another were not as tight as they would be later.
Right.
But the songs are there, the sounds are there, the guitar tones, the synthesizer tones. I mean, like right from the get-go, he's making these insane, otherworldly, machine, grotesque sounds and noises rather than standard keyboard twiddlings and diddlings and noodlings. I mean, obviously a lot of work went into this.
Yeah.
And it pays off, man. It's obvious to those of us observing this almost 50 years later. And then we have in typical Devo archival fashion, one final song on the tape, and it's a song that doesn't appear anywhere else, and the tape runs out in the middle of the song. And that is a song called Androgyny. Sounds to me like somebody got their hands on some kind of religious tract that was decrying androgyny, and that became the basis of the song.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was actually kind of lampooning kind of the men's movement, the Robert Bly men's movement stuff, I think.
See, now I'm a child of the 80s. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, there was a big thing about, men should go out in the woods and have drum circles and get in touch with their testosterone. Robert Bly was a poet that was into it, and I just think I wrote that song and then played that in a slide tuning, but that was really the only time I think that song was ever performed.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even heard of it, except maybe in a print mention, of talking about this show in particular. But there it is. We got at least half of it, and that's pretty cool. So I'm curious too, how did you and Bob Casale work out guitar parts when you guys were writing songs?
Bob would usually play rhythm, and so I don't know. It would when the stuff that I would play was all like up the neck. I'm playing around the octave with a lot of bends and stuff like that, and he would be playing actual chunkier chords.
Right, and occasionally
for the most part.
Right. They're in that clip from the first ever Devo performance. So you can see for about 2 seconds the both of you playing slide guitar. I don't know what song it is, but that was pretty interesting too. And that's all we got. That's the entirety of the recording of the second ever Devo performance.
And then of course we had Oh No, which doesn't appear much, and All of Us, which I think All of Us was an important tune because I think it was like it was the first like anthem that you'd later hear, like Smart Patrol is, I think, kind of another version of All of Us. And the interesting thing about All of Us is, All of Us was like a collective for the mass of humanity. I know a place where dreams are crushed, hopes are smashed, and that ain't much. All us stupids anyway, we're all gonna die someday, all of us. And interestingly enough, Dorn loved that song, and he actually makes reference to it in one of his poems. And actually, if we have time, I was going to read that, if that works for you. This is a Recollections of Grana Pacharia. It was kind of a comic book of poetry. And Michael Myers, who was at the Creative Arts Festival that year, he did linoleum line prints. And so he did all of the line prints for the broadsides. And Dorn wrote this series of poems about the Apache and what had happened to the Apache. And if it works for you, I would like to read this one poem.
Please.
Okay, this is called La Maquina a Houston. The train has come to rest and ceased its creaking. We hear the heavy breathing of the Maquina, a relic in its own time, like all the manifestations of technical art, and without real gender, and hidden from direct appeal by the particulates of the English language, itself the agent of fragmentation and lonely accuser of the generic lines. The heavy breathing of the lonely Maquina stopped in its tracks, waiting for the photograph. The Apache are prodded out into the light. Remember, There were still dark places then, even in the solar monopoly of Arizona and Texas. We are the man with the camera. They step off the train and wait among the weeds. They never take their eyes off of us. Wise practice. We motion the way with our shotguns. They are almost incredibly beautiful. We are struck and thrilled with the completeness of their smell. To them, we are weird, while to us, they are not weird. To them, we are undeniable, and they stop only before that. They are like us, yet we are not like them, since we don't recognize that. We say, one cannot have a piece of what is indivisible as natural Apache policy, where for us, that is a philosophical implication. We are like, but we see things from behind dissimilar costumes. The first principle of warfare, where all of us is the army and they are the people. Precisely, they step off the train, and this is an important terminal moment in the rush hour begun in this hemisphere. This is the moment before the leg irons. They look good. They look better than we do. They will look better than we look forever. We will never really look very good. We are too far gone on thought and its rejections, the two actions of a noose. As the train moves off at the first turn of the wheel with its cargo of Florida-bound exiles, most all of whom had been put bodily into the coaches, their 3,000 dogs who had followed them like a grand party to the railhead at Holbrook began to cry when they saw the smoking creature resonate with their masters. And as the machina acquired speed, they howled and moaned, a frightening noise from their great mass. And some of them followed the cars for 40 miles before they fell away in exhaustion.
Damn.
So, and so this came out in 1974. So pretty much that the song "All of Us" stuck in his brain and came out in a poem that was published the same year. And then here's another book of his, High West Rendezvous. And in this, he has a poetic form where at the top is the poem, then there's meta text, and then at the very bottom, there's like a crawl, like the crawl at the bottom of the news or the stock report. And I just wanted to include this little reference to Devo that he includes in it. Goodyear condom circles downtown Cleveland, mistaken for Akron, drops tons of sperm pellets on Rock Hall of Fame. No effect, fame flat. Anonymity advances. Chrissy Hind, Bob Lewis, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Mothersbaugh, steady as firestones. Forget the Browns. Jim Brown's gone away.
Nice.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the people who were there for the Creative Arts Festival. Besides us, there was Joanne Kiger, and she was a Black Mountain poet, and Joel Oppenheimer, he was a Black Mountain poet. Robert Creeley, he was a Black Mountain poet. Black Mountain is important because it was an experimental college started in the 30s. The heyday was the 50s. It closed at the end of the 50s, but John Cage was there, and Buckminster Fuller was there, and Charles Swanson, art history prof that Jerry and I had, was there. And Black Mountain was an experimental school, and it was kind of like the opening of postmodern thought in America, because, you know, it wasn't like Derrida or Lacan doing deconstruction in France, but some of the same stuff was going on there, and we got kind of a direct infusion of that. We were lucky enough to be exposed to that. And it was not just the fact that we were lucky, but the fact that young punks who were still wet behind the ears and, you know, had this crazy theory that here, like, people of substance were actually like recognizing it and helping us and like getting it. And it was an amazing confirmation. And without that, I don't know what would have happened. And then, of course, there was Dorn and his wife Jennifer. And I don't know if I've told you this before, stop me, but he was teaching in England in the late 60s, and he met her. And Jennifer Dunbar, she and her sister were these twin sisters that were in the London scene. She dated Gordon of Peter and Gordon before she met Ed. And her brother John Dunbar had the art gallery where Yoko and John got together. So like she knew the Beatles and all these people. And so like she had like extra credit status, and the fact that she would tolerate us. She was about our age, but like I think she was my age. And the fact that she would tolerate us also was kind of like a positive indicator.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, however arcane, there's your oh no again, O-N-O.
Yeah, right.
I just want to take a little bit of a swerve right here now and get on one of my favorite hobby horses. I take every chance I possibly can to put forth my theory that, contrary to popular opinion, Yoko Ono did not destroy the Beatles. The Beatles destroyed Yoko Ono.
I think yeah, I think that's very. I mean, the Beatles were going to dissolve anyway because there was simply too much centrifugal force.
Yeah. And then you've got Yoko Ono, who is an absolutely brilliant conceptualist, brilliant artist, having her art held out to a world full of people who are pissed off at her because she broke up those lovable 4 mop tops.
That's right. The boys would have been together forever, living in the same house.
Yeah. And what is this shit about paint with your blood until you pass out? That's bullshit. That's not art. So I'll advocate for Yoko Ono until it's no longer necessary to do so. Thank you very much. So that was my swerve. Please continue. Don't let me stop you. We're talking about your thing.
I'm thinking actually we're kind of at a semi-logical stopping point, unless there's some more stuff about the songs you want to talk about. Otherwise, I'm pretty good for this session. So
that's pretty much it. The only things I would have added is that with androgyny, you've got the first example I can think of a mechanical rhythm, which to me sounds like Mark probably came up with on the keyboards. Kind of a little bit of a foreshadowing of Giacomo Homo in its approach.
Right. Well, and I think this is interesting. We'll probably talk about this some more later, but and I just recently discovered this that like as talented as Mark was, he had not really written songs because I was talking to Mike Powell, who was in Flossie Bobbit with him, and Mike had written all the songs. Now Mark would add the keyboard parts, but structurally, Mike had already had the forms down. And so I don't know that Mark composed original music. And I think one of the things that we were able to do was to hand him a template of if you want to write Devo songs, here's kind of criteria, distinct parts, simplicity, and then but I think between Be Stiff and Pig's Waddle and All of Us and Can You Take It, which I think was a really artificially constructed song, because it's got that middle section where you have like it's like you alternate 6, 6 and 5 and 6 and 5 and 6 and 5 and 6 and 5, so you've got 44 notes broken up into, I guess it's like, I don't know, 8 bars. So I don't even know what the timing is on that, but that kind of stuff. And then from then on, the farther it goes, Mark, more and more is taking that template and cranking it out. because he can
Right.
crank them out.
No, definitely. He seems to me to be one of those guys who basically just never stops making music. You know,
Right.
whether he's playing or writing, it seems like it's just like Prince was that way. John Cale is that way. Sun Ra was that way, just constantly generating music.
Sending messages out into the universe.
Yeah. Please don't stop. Mark Mothersbaugh, don't stop. We're in favor of it. And the only other point I wanted to bring is that All of Us is the second song of this particular set that's got some emotional depth and again cuts very close to the bone and is maybe a little more honest emotionally than Devo would ever be after that.
And once again, it's autobiographical from Jerry.
I don't even want to know. I'm going to listen to it some more and
Yeah, do that. Then we'll talk about that later.
yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. Well, this has been great. I've loved dissecting this really amazing Devo performance tape, which is on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel, yes?
Yes.
How do people find it?
Search Devo Bob Lewis, and I think that will come up with both of them.
Right on. Excellent. And so we'll leave it at that. All you spuds and spuddises out there, do your homework. Look up Bob Lewis Devo on YouTube and stay tuned for the next Malcolm Tent Shoot interview exploring the depths of Devo with Bob Lewis. Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Malcolm. Talk to you soon.
Right on. This is Malcolm Tent saying over and out. And I've paused recording. Whew.
Good night, man.
Night. See you later.